The evening rush at Bellini's Italian restaurant was in full swing. The smell of garlic bread and fresh pasta sauce filled the air as customers chatted over glasses of wine. In the middle of it all moved Lily Chen, carrying 3 plates balanced perfectly along her arm. She weaved between tables with the grace of someone who had done this thousands of times before. "Here we go," she said with a warm smile, setting down a steaming plate of fettuccine. "Be careful, the plate is hot." The businessman nodded his thanks as Lily moved on to deliver the rest of the orders. At 32, Lily had been working at Bellini's for nearly 7 years. The upscale restaurant, with its warm lighting and exposed brick walls, was a favorite spot in downtown Chicago for business meetings and romantic dates alike. To the regular customers, Lily was simply the friendly waitress who somehow never forgot their usual orders. She knew who liked extra Parmesan, who would want a second glass of the house red without having to ask, and who would definitely save room for the tiramisu. "Table 12 needs more bread," she told Raj, one of the busboys, as she headed back to the kitchen to pick up another order. The kitchen was a whirlwind of activity, with Chef Antonio barking orders in his mix of English and Italian, while cooks moved around each other in a well-practiced dance. "Lily, 2 more minutes on the chicken marsala for table 8, the chef called out. She nodded and took a moment to check her reflection in the shiny surface of a steel refrigerator. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and despite the hectic pace, not a strand was out of place. She straightened her black server's uniform and took a deep breath before heading back out into the dining room. Her co-workers saw her as reliable, friendly, but somewhat private. During breaks, when the other servers gathered in the back alley to chat and complain about difficult customers, Lily would often sit alone, earbuds in, staring off into space. Few people at Bellini's knew anything about her life outside of work. They didn't know that beneath her efficient server exterior was a woman who once dreamed of filling concert halls with music. None of them had any idea that 10 years ago, Lily Chen had been one of the most promising piano students at the prestigious Juilliard School in New York. None of them knew that her fingers, now used for carrying plates and typing orders into the system, had once danced across piano keys, bringing complex musical pieces to life. The few personal details she had shared over the years never included her past as a gifted musician. As the dinner service continued, Lily noticed Mr. Bellini, the restaurant owner, looking increasingly worried as he checked his watch and frowned at his phone. The middle-aged Italian man with salt and pepper hair was usually the picture of calm confidence as he greeted guests and recommended wines. Tonight, something was clearly bothering him. "Everything okay, Mr. Bellini?" Lily asked as she passed by with a tray of empty glasses. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Not really. Angelo just called in sick. He's got a fever and can't make it in tonight." Lily glanced at the baby grand piano that sat in the corner of the dining room. The glossy black instrument was one of the restaurant's distinctive features. Every Friday and Saturday night, Angelo, a retired music teacher, would play a mix of classical music and jazz standards, creating the perfect atmosphere for fine dining. The piano was currently silent, looking almost lonely without its usual player. "Can't you use the recorded playlist like you do on weeknights?" Lily suggested, though she already knew the answer. "It's not the same," Mr. Bellini sighed. "People expect live music on Friday nights. The Morgansons are coming in for their anniversary dinner. They specifically asked if Angelo would be playing their favorite Chopin piece. And the Halversons made a reservation for a business dinner with some important clients. They always rave about our live music." Lily nodded sympathetically and continued with her work, but her eyes kept drifting to the piano. It had been years since she had played on such a fine instrument. Her apartment only had space for a small digital keyboard that she used occasionally, when the ache to play became too strong to ignore. But it was nothing like a real piano with weighted keys and rich, resonant sound. In truth, Lily hadn't performed for an audience in nearly 8 years. Not since that terrible day when everything changed. She had been halfway through her second year at Juilliard when she received the call that her mother had collapsed at work. The diagnosis came quickly: aggressive pancreatic cancer. With her father long gone and her younger brother still in high school, Lily had no choice but to put her education on hold and return home to Chicago. "It's just temporary," she had told her professors, "just until Mom gets better." But her mother never did get better. The months that followed were a blur of hospital visits, medical bills, and trying to keep her brother's life as normal as possible while their mother weakened day by day. By the time her mother passed away, Lily was drowning in medical debt. Her scholarship to Juilliard had expired, and with a teenage brother now depending on her, returning to New York became an impossible dream. She found work waiting tables, first at a diner, then at nicer restaurants as she gained experience. The years passed, and gradually, playing the piano became something she did less and less. Her brother graduated high school, then college, and now worked as an engineer in California. The practical necessity of putting her dreams aside had turned into a habit, and then into a new reality. As Lily delivered a bottle of Chianti to a couple celebrating an engagement, she heard Mr. Bellini on the phone. His voice stressed. "Yes, I understand it's last minute, but is there any chance you could come in?" "Just for 2 hours?" He paused, listening. "I see. Well, thank you anyway." He hung up and muttered something in Italian that Lily was pretty sure wasn't appropriate for customer service. "No luck finding a replacement?" she asked as she passed by again. "No," he said grimly. "Everyone I know who can play decently is already booked for Friday night. I'll have to tell the Morgansons we don't have anyone to play their anniversary song." Lily bit her lip, feeling a flutter of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Was it excitement, fear? She wasn't sure, but watching Mr. Bellini's disappointment made something stir inside her. She glanced at the clock. It was 6:45 p.m. The dinner rush would hit its peak in about 30 minutes, and by 7:30, the restaurant would be completely full. The Morgansons' reservation was for 8:00. "Mr. Bellini," she said, her voice barely audible over the restaurant noise. He looked at her distractedly. "Yes, Lily?" "I can play." He stared at her for a moment, not comprehending. "Play what?" She tilted her head toward the piano. "The piano." "I can play for tonight." Mr. Bellini's eyebrows shot up. "You play piano? Well enough to perform? Here?" Lily took a deep breath. "I studied at Juilliard. For almost 2 years." His mouth fell open slightly. "Juilliard? As in the music school in New York?" "That Juilliard?" She nodded, suddenly feeling very exposed. In 7 years of working at Bellini's, she had never mentioned her musical background to anyone. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" he asked, looking at her as if seeing her for the first time. Lily shrugged. "It never came up. The truth was more complicated. Talking about her past as a pianist meant talking about why she had stopped, and that was a pain she had learned to keep tucked away." Mr. Bellini still looked skeptical. "Juilliard," he repeated. "That's very impressive, but that was what, a few years ago?" 8 years, she corrected him. "But I still play sometimes. Not professionally, but—" She trailed off, suddenly doubting herself. What was she thinking? She couldn't just sit down and perform after all this time. But Mr. Bellini was already looking hopeful. "Do you know Chopin?" "The Morgansons love Chopin." "Yes," she said. "I know several of his pieces." The first dinner guests were already arriving, being seated by the host at the front. Mr. Bellini looked at Lily, then at the piano, then back at Lily. "Can you play something for me? Just so I can—" He didn't finish the sentence, but his meaning was clear. He needed to know if she could actually play well enough. Lily nodded and walked over to the piano. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure everyone in the restaurant could hear it. As she sat down on the bench, she felt like she was in a dream. The keyboard stretched out before her, familiar and foreign all at once. She placed her hands on the keys, surprised by how cool and smooth they felt. Then, almost without thinking, she began to play the opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune, one of the first complex pieces she had mastered as a teenager. The restaurant seemed to fade away as her fingers remembered what to do. The music flowed from somewhere deep inside her, a place she had kept locked away for too long. There were a few hesitations, a missed note here and there, but the essence of the piece, its gentle, dreamy quality, came through. When she finished and looked up, Mr. Bellini was staring at her with an expression of disbelief and delight. Several nearby diners had paused their conversations to listen. "Lily," Mr. Bellini said, shaking his head slowly, "you've been hiding this talent all these years?" She gave him a small smile. "So should I play tonight?" "Yes," he said immediately. "Absolutely yes. But wait, you're supposed to be serving tables. We're fully booked." "I can help with that," said Dina, another waitress who had been listening nearby. "I can take some of Lily's tables. To be honest, I'd rather do the The staff room at Bellini's was small but well kept, with lockers for employees and a couch where servers could rest their feet during breaks. Lily stood in front of the full-length mirror attached to the back of the door, hardly recognizing herself. She had changed from her server's uniform into a simple black dress that the restaurant kept on hand for emergencies. It was a little loose on her slender frame, but with a few strategic safety pins provided by Dina, it looked presentable enough. "I can't believe you never told anyone you were some kind of piano genius," Dina said, helping Lily pin her hair into a more elegant style than her usual practical bun. 7 years working together and I'm just finding out now?" Lily smiled nervously. "I'm not a genius. I just had good teachers." "Still," Dina insisted, securing a final pin, "Juilliard isn't exactly community college." "That's a big deal." Lily looked at herself one more time. The woman in the mirror looked like a performer, not a waitress. She felt like an imposter. "What if I mess up?" she whispered, more to herself than to Dina. Dina squeezed her shoulder. "Then you mess up. People make mistakes. But from what Mr. Bellini said about how you played just now, I don't think you will." A knock on the door interrupted them. "5 minutes," called Mr. Bellini's voice. "The Morgansons just arrived." Lily took a deep breath. "Okay, I'm ready." But as she stepped out of the staff room and saw the now packed restaurant, she wasn't sure if that was true. The Friday night crowd at Bellini's was always a mix of regulars and special occasions. Couples on dates, families celebrating birthdays, business associates impressing clients. Tonight was no different except that all these people would soon be listening to her play. Her hands felt cold as she made her way toward the piano. A few customers who recognized her from serving their tables earlier looked confused. She heard one woman whisper to her companion, "Isn't that our waitress?" The baby grand piano gleamed under the warm lighting. Mr. Bellini had positioned it perfectly so that it was visible from most tables, but didn't dominate the space. As Lily approached, she noticed he had even placed a glass of water on a small side table for her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Bellini announced, his voice carrying through the restaurant, "our regular pianist Angelo is unfortunately ill this evening. However, we are very pleased to have our own Lily Chen stepping in. Please enjoy the music." There was a smattering of polite applause, more out of courtesy than excitement. These people had no expectations of her. They probably assumed she was just a hobby pianist who could play a few simple tunes, better than recorded music but nothing special. Lily sat down on the bench, adjusting its height. The piano was a Steinway, far superior to anything she had touched in years. She placed her fingers on the keys, feeling their weight and responsiveness. For a moment she froze, her mind suddenly blank. What should she play first? Then she remembered her training. Start with something comfortable, something that would help her settle her nerves. Her fingers found the opening chords of Mozart's Piano Sonata No. 16 in C major. It was a piece often given to intermediate students, but its cheerful, flowing melody made it a perfect opener. As she played the familiar notes, Lily felt herself begin to relax. The restaurant noise gradually dimmed as diners noticed the music. By the time she finished the piece, she felt more at ease. She transitioned smoothly into a Chopin waltz, then a gentle Brahms intermezzo. Between pieces, she would take small sips of water and glance around the restaurant. People were still eating and talking, but she noticed more heads turning toward the piano, more conversations pausing to listen. Mr. Bellini caught her eye from across the room and gave her an encouraging nod. Around 8 o'clock, the host led an older couple to a table decorated with a small happy anniversary sign. Lily recognized them as the Morgansons that Mr. Bellini had mentioned. She watched as Mr. Bellini greeted them warmly, leaning down to speak quietly to the husband. The man looked over at Lily with interest, then smiled and nodded. A minute later, Mr. Bellini approached the piano. "The Morgansons are celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary tonight," he told her quietly. "Their special song is Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Do you know it?" Lily nodded. "Opera 9 No. 2, yes, I can play that." "Wonderful. Perhaps after they've had their appetizers." "Of course." As Mr. Bellini walked away, Lily felt a flutter of nerves again. The Nocturne was a famous piece, one that many people knew and loved. It wasn't technically the most difficult of Chopin's works, but it required sensitivity and emotion to play well. She continued with her planned selections, mixing in some lighter pieces, a transcription of a Beatles song, a jazz standard that Angelo often played. As she played, she noticed something surprising. Her fingers, which had felt stiff and uncertain at first, were remembering. Muscle memory built from thousands of hours of practice was taking over. She found herself adding small flourishes, varying the dynamics more confidently, letting the music breathe. When she saw the server deliver the Morgansons' appetizers, she prepared herself. After finishing her current piece, she paused and turned slightly toward their table. "This next piece is a Chopin nocturne in E-flat major," she announced, her voice shakier than she would have liked. "It's dedicated to the Morgansons, who are celebrating 40 years of marriage. Tonight." The couple looked delighted at the recognition. Mrs. Morganson reached across the table to squeeze her husband's hand as Lily began to play. The nocturne's opening notes floated through the restaurant, delicate and dreamlike. Lily closed her eyes, letting the familiar melody guide her fingers. This piece had always been special to her. She had performed it at her last recital before leaving Juilliard. Playing it now brought back memories of who she had been then. Young, ambitious, certain of her path. When she opened her eyes again, she was surprised to see that many diners had stopped eating to listen. The Morgansons were watching her with misty eyes, their appetizers momentarily forgotten. As the final notes of the nocturne faded, there was a moment of complete silence in the restaurant. Then applause broke out. Not just polite clapping, but enthusiastic appreciation. Mrs. Morganson wiped a tear from her eye and mouthed, "Thank you," to Lily. The moment filled her with an unexpected warmth. This was why she had loved playing, not just for the music itself, but for its ability to touch people, to create moments of beauty and connection. As the evening progressed, Lily found herself enjoying the performance more and more. Her initial nervousness had given way to a kind of exhilaration. She played pieces she hadn't attempted in years, surprised at how much her hands remembered. When she made occasional mistakes, she recovered quickly, remembering her old teacher's advice. Never let them see you falter. Music flows like a river. If you hit a rock, just keep flowing. Around 9:30, during a short break, Mr. Bellini approached her again, this time with a well-dressed man she didn't recognize. "Lily, this is Mr. Halverson," he introduced. "He and his business associates have been enjoying your playing tremendously." "You're very talented," Mr. Halverson said, extending his hand. "Antonio tells me you studied at Juilliard? What brought you to waiting tables at Bellini's?" The question was asked innocently enough, but Lily felt her chest tighten. How could she explain the complicated path that had led her here without sharing more than she wanted to? "Life took an unexpected turn," she said simply, shaking his hand. "Family obligations." Mr. Halverson nodded, seeming to understand there was more to the story. "Well, their loss is our gain tonight. My clients are absolutely impressed. One of them is on the board of the Chicago Symphony's community program, actually. I think she may want to speak with you later." As he walked away, Lily felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride at the compliment, certainly, but also a twinge of regret for the path not taken, and perhaps a flicker of something else. Possibility? She pushed these thoughts aside as she returned to the piano. The dinner crowd was starting to thin a bit, though many tables were still occupied. Looking around, she noticed that people seemed to be lingering longer than usual, ordering dessert and coffee rather than asking for the check. For her next set, Lily decided to try something more challenging. She began Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, a piece with dramatic chords and running passages that required more technical skill than anything she had played so far. As the powerful opening chords rang out, she felt a thrill run through her. This was testing her limits after years of minimal practice, but her fingers rose to the challenge. The music built in intensity, filling the restaurant with its passionate melody. By the time she reached the thunderous climax of the piece, the restaurant had grown almost completely silent. Servers had paused in their duties. Diners had stopped their conversations, all to listen to the unexpected virtuosity coming from the woman they had previously known only as a waitress. When she struck the final chord, there was another moment of silence before the restaurant erupted in applause. This time it wasn't just appreciation, it was amazement. Several people stood up, applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Lily felt her face grow warm as she acknowledged the response with a small nod. In that moment, something shifted inside her. For years, she had tucked away her identity as a musician, seeing it as part of a past life that circumstances had forced her to abandon. But as the evening progressed, word spread throughout the restaurant about the waitress turned pianist. Customers who had finished their meals lingered over coffee and dessert, reluctant to leave while Lily was still playing. Tables that would normally have turned over for a second seating remained occupied. The bar area, usually quiet on dinner nights, began to fill with people who had heard from friends that something special was happening at Bellini's. By 10 o'clock, Lily had been playing for nearly 3 hours with only short breaks. Her fingers should have been tired, but instead they seemed to be waking up, remembering skills that had lain dormant for years. With each piece, her confidence grew. The piano no longer felt foreign under her touch, but like an old friend welcoming her back. During one of her short breaks, Dina brought her a glass of water and leaned in close. "Have you seen what's happening?" she whispered excitedly. "People are recording you on their phones. And I overheard someone saying they're live streaming on Instagram." Lily glanced around and noticed several phones held up, their camera lenses pointed in her direction. The realization made her stomach tighten with anxiety. She had been so absorbed in the music that she hadn't noticed becoming a spectacle. "Is that okay?" she asked, suddenly worried about drawing too much attention. "Okay. It's amazing." Dina squeezed her shoulder. "Mr. Bellini is practically dancing. We haven't had this kind of buzz since that food critic from the Tribune came in last year." As Dina hurried off to serve another table, Lily took a moment to compose herself. She hadn't planned for this level of attention. She had simply offered to fill in for one night to help out in an emergency. But now, looking around at the crowded restaurant, seeing the appreciative faces and hearing the enthusiastic conversations about her playing, she felt something stir inside her, a hunger she had nearly forgotten. When she returned to the piano, she decided to push herself further. She began to play Liszt's La Campanella, one of the most technically challenging pieces in the piano repertoire. It required lightning-fast fingerwork, huge leaps across the keyboard, and precise control. In her Juilliard days, she had spent months perfecting it. As the rapid, bell-like tones filled the restaurant, conversation stopped entirely. Servers paused with trays in hand. Even the kitchen staff appeared in the doorway, drawn by the virtuosic sounds. Lily's hands flew across the keys, muscle memory taking over where practice had lapsed. There were moments when she faltered slightly, when her fingers couldn't quite keep up with what her mind remembered, but she pushed through, letting the music carry her. When she struck the final notes, the restaurant erupted in applause, not the polite acknowledgement of background music, but the enthusiastic response of an audience at a concert hall. People stood from their tables clapping and cheering. Lily felt her face flush with a mix of embarrassment and exhilaration as she nodded her thanks. As the applause died down, a woman approached the piano. She was elegantly dressed, with silver-streaked dark hair and an air of quiet authority. "That was extraordinary," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Grace Wong with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's Community Outreach Program." Lily shook her hand, her heart suddenly racing. "Thank you. I'm Lily Chen. Mr. Halverson mentioned you studied at Juilliard," Grace said. "May I ask who your teacher was?" "Dr. Abramovich," Lily replied, the name feeling strange on her lips after so many years. Grace's eyebrows rose. "Vera Abramovich? She's legendary. I attended a masterclass she gave in Boston years ago." She studied Lily with new interest. "And now you're here at Bellini's." The unspoken question hung in the air between them. "Life took an unexpected turn," Lily said, the same explanation she had given earlier. "Family obligations made it impossible to continue at Juilliard." Grace nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Life rarely follows a straight path, especially for artists." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "We have a program that brings music to underserved schools in Chicago. We're always looking for talented instructors who can inspire young musicians. From what I heard tonight, you would be perfect." Lily took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. "I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I've taught anyone." "Just think about it," Grace said. "We could start you with a few hours a week. The pay isn't what you'd get performing with an orchestra, but it's a way to reconnect with music in a meaningful way." She smiled warmly. "Call me when you're ready. No pressure." As Grace returned to her table, Lily stared at the business card in her hand. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra logo gleamed in gold embossing. It felt like a door cracking open to a world she had forced herself to forget. Mr. Bellini appeared at her side, beaming with excitement. "Lily, you never told me you could play like that. People are talking about coming back tomorrow night to hear you again." "Tomorrow?" Lily looked up, startled. "But Angelo will be back by then, won't he?" "Perhaps," Mr. Bellini said, his expression thoughtful. "But after what I heard tonight, I'm thinking we might need 2 pianists at Bellini's." He gestured around the restaurant. "Look at this place. We're usually winding down by now on Fridays, but no one wants to leave." It was true. Despite the late hour, the restaurant was still nearly full. At several tables, Lily noticed people she recognized as regular customers, who had finished their meals long ago but were still nursing drinks, their attention focused on the piano. "What do you say?" Mr. Bellini continued. "Would you consider playing regularly? We could work around your serving shifts, or—" He hesitated, then added, "Or maybe you'd prefer to just play. We could discuss a proper salary." Lily felt overwhelmed. A few hours ago, she had been just another waitress at an upscale restaurant. Now she was being offered a position as a pianist and had a business card from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in her hand. "Can I think about it?" she asked. Of course, Mr. Bellini nodded. "No rush, but tonight." He checked his watch. "We're still open for another hour. Think you can keep playing?" Lily smiled. "Yes, I can do that." As Mr. Bellini walked away, Lily tucked Grace's card carefully into the pocket of the borrowed dress. She turned back to the piano, considering what to play next. After the technical fireworks of the Liszt piece, she decided to shift to something more introspective. Her fingers found the opening notes of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, its haunting melody filling the now hushed restaurant. As she played, Lily found herself thinking about the strange twists her life had taken. 8 years ago, when she had left Juilliard to care for her mother, she had been devastated, certain that her dreams of a musical career were over forever. The years that followed had been hard, working multiple jobs to pay off medical bills, making sure her brother could stay in school, grieving her mother's death. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped allowing herself to think about what might have been. She had packed away her ambitions along with her sheet music, telling herself that she had made the necessary choice, the responsible choice. Being a waitress became not just a job but an identity, safer than holding on to impossible dreams. But tonight, sitting at this piano with music flowing from her fingers and appreciation flowing from the audience, she realized how much of herself she had locked away. The joy she felt now wasn't just about performing again. It was about being whole again, about reclaiming a vital part of herself that she had tried to forget. As the final, somber chords of the sonata's first movement faded away, Lily didn't pause but transitioned directly into the more hopeful melodies of George Winston's Joy. The contrast felt right, moving from shadow into light, from resignation to possibility. Near the back of the restaurant, she noticed a young man who had been watching her intently. He couldn't have been more than 16 or 17, and he was leaning forward in his chair, his eyes fixed on her hands as they moved across the keys. There was a hunger in his expression that Lily recognized, the look of someone who wanted desperately to create beauty through music. When she finished the piece, she saw the boy's mother urging him forward. After some hesitation, he approached the piano. "That was amazing," he said, his voice cracking slightly with adolescent awkwardness. "I'm learning piano too, but I've never heard anyone play like that in person before." "Thank you," Lily said, touched by his earnestness. "How long have you been playing?" 3 years, he replied. "But my mom says we can't afford lessons anymore, so I've been trying to teach myself from YouTube videos." Lily thought of Grace's card in her pocket, of the outreach program bringing music to schools that couldn't afford it. "Don't give up," she told him. "Music has a way of staying with you even when you think it's gone." She surprised herself with the sudden impulse to add, "If you leave your contact information with the host, maybe I could give you a few pointers sometime." The boy's face lit up with hope. "Really? That would be awesome." He thanked her profusely before returning to his table, practically bouncing with excitement. As Lily turned back to the piano, she caught sight of herself reflected in its polished surface. She looked different somehow, more alive, more present than she had in years. The woman in the reflection wasn't just Lily the reliable waitress, but Lily the pianist, Lily the musician, Lily the teacher. It was as if layers of herself that had been hidden were becoming visible again. For her, Lily woke the next morning to the sound of her phone buzzing insistently. Groggily, she reached for it, surprised to see a flood of notifications. There were text messages from coworkers she hadn't heard from in months, several missed calls from Dina, and dozens of social media alerts. Sitting up in bed, she scrolled through the messages with growing astonishment. Dina had sent her a link to an Instagram video captioned, "Hidden piano genius discovered waiting tables in Chicago." The video, posted by a food blogger with thousands of followers, showed Lily playing the Liszt piece from the night before. It already had over 20,000 views. "Call me when you wake up." Dina's text read, "You're going viral." Lily's hands trembled slightly as she played the video. The angle wasn't perfect. It had been recorded from a table near the back of the restaurant, but the sound was clear enough. She watched her own hands flying across the keys, heard the gasps from diners as she navigated particularly difficult passages. The comments below were filled with amazement. "Wait, she's actually their waitress? Juilliard-level talent serving pasta. Someone get this woman a recording contract. I'm literally crying. This is so beautiful." Lily put the phone down, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. She had never sought attention or fame. Even in her Juilliard days, she had been somewhat shy, preferring to express herself through music rather than words. The thought of thousands of strangers watching her play made her stomach churn with anxiety. Her phone rang again. This time it was Mr. Bellini. "Lily," he exclaimed when she answered. "Have you seen the internet? People are talking about you everywhere. We've received 63 calls for dinner reservations since opening this morning, and it's not even noon yet. Everyone is asking if the piano waitress will be playing tonight. I don't know what to say," Lily stammered. "Say yes," Mr. Bellini urged. "Angelo called and he's still sick with fever. The doctor told him to rest all weekend. We need you, Lily. I'll double your usual pay. No, triple it." Lily hesitated. Last night had been magical, a spontaneous reconnection with her passion. But performing again, with expectations and an audience that was coming specifically to hear her, that was different. That was pressure. "Can I think about it and call you back?" she asked. Of course, but not too long, okay? People are asking for reservations specifically during the time when you would play." After hanging up, Lily sat on the edge of her bed, trying to process everything that was happening. Her small apartment felt both like a sanctuary and a cage. For years, this modest one-bedroom had been enough. It was a place to sleep between shifts, to occasionally practice on her small keyboard, to watch movies with a glass of wine on her rare days off. She walked to the closet and pulled out a cardboard box she kept on the top shelf. Inside were mementos from her life before Bellini's, programs from recitals she had performed in, sheet music with her teacher's notations in the margins, a few photographs of her with fellow students at Juilliard. At the bottom was a letter of recommendation Dr. Abramovich had written for her, praising her exceptional talent and promising future. Lily ran her fingers over the words, remembering how proud she had been to receive such praise from her stern but brilliant teacher. Back then, she had been so certain of her path. She would finish at Juilliard, perhaps pursue a master's degree, compete in international competitions, eventually teach at a conservatory while maintaining a performance schedule. Life had other plans. She was startled from her thoughts by another call, this one from a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Lily Chen?" asked a woman's voice. "Yes, this is she." "This is Grace Wong from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. We met last night at Bellini's." "Yes, of course," Lily said, suddenly alert. "I remember. I hope I'm not calling too early, but I wanted to reach you before things get too hectic. A video of you playing has been circulating online, and several of my colleagues have seen it. We're all quite impressed." "Thank you," Lily said, still not used to such praise. "I mentioned our community program last night, but after seeing the response to your playing, I'd like to propose something more immediate. We have a fundraising event next weekend for our youth music education initiative. Our scheduled pianist had to cancel due to a family emergency. Would you consider filling in?" Lily felt a rush of conflicting emotions, excitement, fear, disbelief. I'm not sure I'm ready for something like that. It's been years since I've performed formally." "From what I saw last night, you're more ready than you realize," Grace said kindly. "The event is small, about 100 donors in a hotel ballroom. Nothing too intimidating. And it would be a wonderful opportunity to introduce you to people who support music education in Chicago." "When would you need to know?" "By Monday, if possible." I understand this is sudden and you may need time to think about it. Yes, I would appreciate that. Of course. And Lily? Regardless of what you decide about this event, my offer about the teaching position stands. We would be lucky to have someone of your caliber working with our students. After Grace hung up, Lily paced around her apartment, too restless to sit still. In the span of 12 hours, her quiet life had exploded with possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider in years. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. She made herself a cup of tea and sat down at the small digital keyboard she kept in the corner of her living room. It was nothing like the magnificent Steinway at Bellini's, but it had been her connection to music during the lean years. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play softly, letting the familiar motions calm her racing thoughts. Her phone buzzed with another text from Dina. Have you seen the news? Channel 7 mentioned you this morning. Attached was a screenshot of a local morning show with the caption, Viral video, Chicago waitress stuns restaurant patrons with world-class piano skills. Lily put the phone down without responding. She needed space to think, to process everything that was happening. She played a simple Bach invention, focusing on the interweaving melodies, letting the mathematical precision of the piece bring order to her chaotic thoughts. Eventually, she picked up her phone again and called her brother in California. Hey, big sis, he answered cheerfully. I was just about to call you. You're all over my social media feed. That's actually why I'm calling, Lily said, her voice tight with anxiety. Tom, I don't know what to do. Everything's happening so fast. What do you mean? This is amazing. You're finally getting recognized for your talent. But I'm not sure I want all this attention. I'm not sure I'm ready to be a performer again. What if I fail? What if I make a fool of myself? There was a pause on the line. Then Tom spoke, his voice gentler. Lily, do you remember what you told me when I was afraid to apply to engineering school? You said that sometimes our fears are just our dreams asking us to take them seriously. Lily smiled at the memory. I was just repeating what Mom used to say. Well, it was good advice. And now I'm giving it back to you. He paused. Lily, when Mom got sick, you put everything on hold without hesitation. You came home, took care of both of us, made sure I could stay in school. You've been carrying everyone else for so long. Maybe it's time you carried yourself for a while. Tears pricked at Lily's eyes. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. But I also know that when you play, you're the most alive version of yourself. I saw it every time, even when you were just playing on that little keyboard in Mom's hospital room. His voice grew more serious. She would be so proud to see you playing again, Lily, so proud. After talking with Tom, Lily felt more centered. She made herself lunch, then sat down and made a list of pros and cons for each opportunity that had suddenly presented itself. Playing regularly at Bellini's, performing at the fundraiser, teaching with the symphony's outreach program. As she worked through her thoughts, she realized that what frightened her most wasn't failure, it was success. If she allowed herself to fully reconnect with music, to step back into that world, she would have to confront the grief and disappointment she had buried years ago. She would have to acknowledge the dreams she had abandoned and decide if they were still worth pursuing in some form. But there was excitement mixed with the fear. The joy she had felt last night at the piano wasn't something she could pretend she didn't want more of. By late afternoon, Lily had made her decisions. She called Mr. Bellini first. I'll play tonight, she told him, and I'd like to discuss a regular schedule, maybe Friday and Saturday nights to start. Mr. Bellini's delight was audible. Wonderful. Magnificent. I'll have a proper contract drawn up with a salary fitting your talent. Her next call was to Grace. I'd like to accept your offer to perform at the fundraiser, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. And I'd also like to learn more about the teaching position. Excellent, Grace replied warmly. I'll email you the details for both. And Lily, I'm very glad you're saying yes to these opportunities. With her decisions made, Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She still had hours before she needed to be at Bellini's for the evening performance. On impulse, she changed into jeans and a sweater, grabbed her coat and headed out. The Chicago Cultural Center was hosting a free concert by young musicians from a local arts high school. Lily slipped into the back of the hall just as the performance was beginning. In a small village, a cat named Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. 3 months had passed since that first night at the piano, and Lily's life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. Spring had arrived in Chicago, bringing with it not just warmer weather but new beginnings. Tonight was a special evening, her first formal recital since leaving Juilliard. The venue wasn't Carnegie Hall but the community center in a working-class neighborhood on Chicago's west side. The audience wasn't filled with critics and music industry professionals but with students, parents, and community members. Yet as Lily adjusted her simple navy blue dress and checked her reflection in the dressing room mirror, she felt the same butterflies she had experienced before her most important performances in her student days. There was a soft knock at the door. 10 minutes, Ms. Chen," called the center's coordinator. "Thank you," Lily replied, taking a deep breath. So much had changed in the past few months. She now performed at Bellini's 3 nights a week, drawing crowds that had made the restaurant one of the hottest spots in the city. Mr. Bellini had given her a significant raise and flexible hours that allowed her to pursue her other musical activities. She still took a few serving shifts each week, partly because she enjoyed the change of pace, and partly because it kept her connected to her coworkers who had become like family over the years. The fundraiser performance for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's education initiative had been a success, leading to more opportunities. Grace Wong had become not just a colleague but a mentor, helping Lily navigate her re-entry into the classical music world with wisdom and encouragement. But the most meaningful change had been Lily's work with the symphony's outreach program. Twice a week she taught piano to children and teens in underserved schools across Chicago. Some had natural talent. Others struggled with basic scales. All of them had filled a space in Lily's heart she hadn't realized was empty. Today's recital was a showcase of her students' progress, with Lily performing a few pieces as the special guest artist. The programs, printed on simple cardstock, listed 12 student performances followed by Lily's closing set. One name on the list brought a particular smile to her face: Zach Taylor, the teenager who had approached her that first night at Bellini's, asking for help with his playing. Zach had become her first private student. When Lily learned that his family couldn't afford regular lessons, she had offered to teach him for free. His raw talent and determination reminded her of herself at that age. Tonight he would be playing Chopin's Nocturne, in E-flat major, the same piece she had played for the Morgansons on that fateful evening. Another knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. The door opened to reveal her brother Tom, who had flown in from California for the recital. He was holding a small bouquet of yellow roses. "Nervous?" he asked with a knowing smile. "Terrified," Lily admitted. "But not for me, for them. I want them to do well so badly." Tom handed her the flowers. "That's how I know you're a real teacher now. Only a true teacher worries more about their students than themselves." He gave her a quick hug. "Mom would be bursting with pride right now, you know." Lily nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "I think about her every time I play, every time I teach. She's here in all of it," Tom said simply. When he left, Lily took a final moment to center herself. On the small table beside the mirror lay Grace's business card, the one she had given Lily that first night. Lily kept it with her at every performance as a reminder of how quickly life can change when you open yourself to possibilities. The community center auditorium was modest, but filled to capacity. As Lily slipped into a seat in the front row, she spotted familiar faces throughout the crowd. Dina and several other Bellini staff had come to show support. Mr. Bellini sat near the back, his wife beside him. Grace Wong was there with colleagues from the symphony. There were even a few fans who had followed Lily's journey from her viral piano moment. One by one, her students took the stage. Some played with confidence, others with visible nervousness. A 7-year-old girl forgot a passage midway through her piece but picked up again with determination. A high school boy with calloused hands from his after-school construction job played a jazz arrangement with surprising sensitivity. Each performance, regardless of technical perfection, contained moments of genuine musicality that made Lily's heart swell with pride. When Zach took the stage for his Chopin Nocturne, Lily found herself holding her breath. He had worked so hard on this piece, struggling with the delicate balance between technical precision and emotional expression. As he began to play, she could hear the hours of practice in each phrase, the careful attention to dynamics and tempo. Midway through the piece, Zach looked up from the keys, playing from memory now, his face transformed by the music. In that moment, Lily saw not just what he was, but what he could become. The audience did too. When he finished, they erupted in enthusiastic applause. Finally, it was Lily's turn. As she walked to the piano, she remembered her first night at Bellini's. How terrified she had been, how unsure of her abilities after years away from serious playing. Tonight felt different. The fear was still there, but it was accompanied by a confidence that came from months of regular practice, from teaching others, from reconnecting with her musical identity. She had chosen her program carefully, pieces that told the story of her journey. She began with Bach's Prelude in C major, the first piece she had ever mastered as a child. She followed with Beethoven's Pathétique Sonata, which she had played during her Juilliard audition. Then came Debussy's Clair de Lune, the piece she had used to convince Mr. Bellini to let her play that first night. For her final piece, she had chosen something new, a composition of her own that she had been working on over the past months. It wove together elements of classical structure with more contemporary harmonies reflecting the different chapters of her life. She had titled it simply Return. As she played the final notes, Lily felt a sense of completion, not an ending but a full circle, a return to herself that honored both who she had been and who she had become. The applause was warm and genuine. When it died down, Lily stood and addressed the audience. "Thank you all for coming tonight. Before we end, I'd like to invite all of my students to join me on stage for our surprise finale." There was a shuffling as 12 students of various ages made their way to the stage. They arranged themselves around the piano as they had practiced, some standing, some sitting on chairs that were quickly brought out. Lily had arranged a simplified version of Pachelbel's canon for 13 players, herself and her 12 students. Each had a part matched to their skill level, from simple whole notes for beginners to more complex passages for the advanced students. Together they created a tapestry of sound that was greater than any one of them could have produced alone. As they played, Lily looked at the faces of her students, concentrated, joyful, proud. She thought about the paths that had brought each of them to music. The girl whose grandmother had saved for years to buy her a keyboard, the boy who practiced on a paper piano drawn on cardboard until the school received donated instruments, the teenager who took 3 buses to get to his lessons after school. She thought too about her own path, the early promise, the devastating detour, the years of quiet longing, and now this unexpected renaissance. None of it had gone according to plan, but somehow she had ended up exactly where she needed to be. When the piece concluded, the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Lily gestured for her students to take a bow, hanging back to let them enjoy the moment. Zach caught her eye and motioned for her to join them at the front of the stage. As she stepped forward to share in their bow, the applause grew even louder. After the recital, the community center hosted a small reception. Parents thanked Lily with tears in their eyes for what she had done for their children. Students hugged her and promised to practice over the summer. Colleagues congratulated her on both her performance and her teaching. Grace Wong approached her with a tall man in a well-cut suit. "Lily, I'd like you to meet David Newcomb, the director of the symphony's education department." "Your work with these students is remarkable," David said, shaking her hand. "Grace has told me about your background and your teaching philosophy. We're expanding our program next year, and we're looking for a full-time coordinator who can both teach and help develop curriculum. Would you be interested in discussing the position?" Lily felt a surge of excitement. A full-time role with the symphony would mean a deeper commitment to music education, a chance to affect even more students' lives. It would also mean reducing her hours at Bellini's, shifting the balance of her professional life further toward music. "I would definitely be interested," she replied. As the reception wound down, Lily found herself standing alone for a moment, taking in the scene around her. Zach was showing his younger brother something on the piano. Tom was chatting with Grace about California.